All right, we're going to call to order the work session for the Cochise County Board of Supervisors. Today's Tuesday, March 25th. We're at the Board of Supervisors hearing room in Melody Lane in Bisbee, Arizona, pursuant to ARS 38431.02H. The public will have access to the meeting room 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Members of the board will be either in person or by telephone. Members of the public may also attend via Microsoft Teams or the mobile app. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comments will not be taken. We will begin with a roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2.
Gomez is here.
District 3. Antonori is here. All supervisors are present and in person. So let's begin with introductions. We will start off with Your Honor and work our way around.
Presiding Juvenile Judge Terry Bannon.
Nilsa Flores, Court Administrator.
Rachel Gray, Chief Deputy for the Clerk's Office of Superior Court.
David Thorne, the presiding judge in Cochise County.
Sharon Gilman, Interim County Administrator.
Kenneth Kerfman, I'm the Associate Presiding Justice of the Peace for Cochise County.
April Sadoff with Probation.
Oh, yes.
That's us.
You're good. All right. Go around. All right. So we'll begin with agenda item number 1. We don't need a motion, so we'll go straight to your Judge Thorne and let you. Oh, what?
Sorry, Chairman. We did have Craig Sullivan on.
That's right. I forgot. You told me, and I totally spaced it out. So, Mr. Sullivan, are you there?
Good afternoon, sir. I am, and I've got Vanessa Fielder on our team with us as well.
All right. Well, the floor is yours. Go ahead and brief us.
Well, so to Administrator Sharon, do you want to set something up here? Do you want me to just go ahead and proceed, which I'm happy to do? Want to make sure we're doing what you'd like.
Sure. So Craig Sullivan's with the County Supervisors Association. He's the executive director, and he is going to give us a short presentation on just the overview of county court funding from the state level as well as Cochise County. And this was at the request of the court administrator to give this background to the board.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sharon. And thank you, members of the board, members of the court, presiding judge. It's all very nice to see all of you there this afternoon, and it's really our pleasure to be online with you to be part of the conversation. Again, I'm Craig Sullivan. I'm the executive director of the County Supervisors Association. I do have with me Vanessa Fielder. She's our Director of Research and Analytics. She's the Chief Data Miner in our organization and has been helping pull some information together. But just a little bit to talk about the organization and a couple of things we have for you. Our primary job is to serve as an intergovernmental office for the supervisors. And so because of that, we do a lot of data collection in the primary functions that the board has control over. Also into the other row officers that the board has to work with and fund and resource. The court system obviously is a very important function in our state, separate branch of government, and it's statutorily linked to the counties in the various regions, as you all know. Historically, we have not had a lot of information to share with county decision makers and the legislature about the state-county court relationship. And so we have been building out some information to better inform the conversation. This really came to a head among our board of directors about 5 years ago, and our board had a conversation about the importance of getting better data, getting better information. And on the next slide, it led to a resolution that our board adopted that we share with the court, we share with legislators, and it really kind of frames some of what we're looking for from the court and how we want to improve our partnership with the court system. A big part of it has to do with the funding nexus. And I think, as you all know, the court-county-state relationship has really just grown up 15 different ways in our state. And so we've been trying to develop information that provides for comparisons across county lines just to help improve some of that decision-making. But this year's resolution had 4 key components to it that I wanted to highlight for you. And first and foremost, it's about the state partnership and funding. And a primary issue that we've been concerned about is the lack of ongoing state funding support for probation officers. It's very important that that not continue to grow into the county general fund. And so we've really been partnering with the court system here at the state legislature to make sure that the state is meeting its obligations. Beyond that, we've been communicating and partnering with AOC to talk about where there are opportunities to look for efficiencies in the court system. It's not something we control. We just think it's a good thing to look at. And when we evaluate bills that come into the legislature or policies that emerge in the court environment, we're often looking for what it does to the county financial situation, and we really try to promote more state funding, sustainable funding solution for the court system, because it's been obviously putting a lot of pressure on the county general funds. So that just kind of frames how we've got into this space. We had Vanessa look into some data over the last few years just to get a little bit more of eyes into what this looks like over time, and we drilled it down into Cochise County. So let me have Vanessa take the next couple of slides for you, and then we'd be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the data that we've been able to collect is produced by the Administrative Office of the Courts and is as a result of a survey of the courts around the state, along with reporting that goes from the AOC to the legislature. And so that's the source of all this data that I'm about to walk through. But just to give you a sense, and as Craig said, it's really most useful to think about this over time and then in comparison to other counties. You all obviously have the best data for what your current year and future year experience is going to be. But when we look at court expenditures in Cochise County over the last 25 years, what we've seen is that there's been a moderate increase in court funding that's not quite risen to the rate of inflation, but has increased in total about 90%. The county has been the major funder of those increases, with funds from county sources increasing by about 150% over that time period in total, while the state contributions to court expenditures has been relatively stagnant since 1999, which is the first year of data that we have available. If we look at how that compares to other similarly sized counties on the next slide, this just takes that same exact data and then says, as a share of all of the court expenditures in each fiscal year, how much came from the county in orange and how much came from the state in blue. And you can see that in the early 2000s, the cost-sharing relationship was more in the mid-60s for the county, but has grown over the last 2 decades to be more of a 70-30 cost share county-state. And that trend is very similar to the other medium-sized and larger rural counties across Arizona. We have also looked specifically at probation expenditures in particular, as the AOC provides more detailed data on that to the legislature on an annual basis. So if we move to the next slide, we can see a couple of key trends. First is in the upper right-hand corner, you can see the total share of funding that comes from the county for adult and juvenile probation departments. This does include detention funding on the juvenile side, but not on the adult side. For Cochise, you all fund a similar amount to what the other similarly sized counties provide in just probation departments. Navajo and Coconino have the closest caseload amounts similar to what Cochise sees on an annual basis, with Navajo kind of being the closest comparator in terms of size. You can see that the other smaller counties that have kind of weaker property tax bases contribute less of the total share of probation funding towards the right-hand side of that graph. The bottom 2 charts are very similar to the first chart that I showed, but they show expenditures for adult probation on the left and then expenditures for juvenile probation on the right, which again includes detention. And the 2 trends I'd point out is that overall adult probation expenditures are increasing, with the county's share increasing more rapidly than the state's. And on the juvenile side, there's been a decline in funding from the data that we can see from AOC, that has largely been in detention-related funding on juvenile expenditures. On the next slide, you can see kind of the other key piece of information, and this comes again from the AOC's monthly probation reports, and it indicates kind of the staffing to caseload ratio that's mandated by statute. So a little bit of background that the court folks will be well familiar with. Statute dictates that there are a certain number of probation and or surveillance officers per probationer for the various different types of probation, adult, standard and intensive, and juvenile standard and intensive. And on a monthly basis, the courts report on a statewide basis where those caseload ratios are. We look most often at the filled caseload ratio, so that would be the actual number of officers who are doing the job versus the number of funded officers. And the reason we do that is over the past several years, and the AOC had an administrative order to this effect, there's been challenges in staffing, particularly the adult standard population as a result of vacancies on a statewide basis. I will say that a lot of counties have seen improvement over the last year or so in terms of seeing caseload ratios come down below the statutory maximums on a filled basis. Cochise has continued to see high caseload ratios in the adult program. This data is from December. The January report came out earlier this week, and it does indicate that your adult standard caseload ratio is now just slightly below the statutory maximum, and the adult intensive is slightly below that. But they still do remain, close to those statutory maximums versus on the juvenile side, caseload ratios are much lower as a percent of the statutory maximum amount. And that is, somewhat in line with kind of your peer counties, but it is generally lower than the other similarly sized counties. And then lastly, on the next slide, Mr. Chair, we did want to point out that given the property tax base in Cochise County and the substantial amount of investment that the board has previously budgeted for all criminal justice expenditures, your county does have a relatively high property tax burden. And so the way that we standardize this across the state is to look at all of the criminal justice expenditures in each county, and this is for fiscal year 2024, and does include not only the courts, but also the attorney, indigent defense, and public safety spending from the county general fund. And then we look at that relative to your property tax base's ability to generate revenue, and then we turn that into a rate, which is in that fourth column with those orange bars. You can see how the county compares to the other 14 counties across the state. And pretty much the takeaway is that if you actually levied this high of a rate, it would take $3.65 on the property tax to cover all of the almost $41 million that the county spends out of the general fund on criminal justice and the courts and public safety. You can see that other counties that have similar populations to you all, Coconino, Navajo, have relatively more robust property tax bases relative to their criminal justice expenditures, and so they don't have as high of a property tax burden. But we wanted to provide that in terms of context when we talk about funding. It is obviously very important to consider the county's ability to generate revenue. And so this slide provides you with a comparison across the state. So, Mr. Chair, I know we went through that relatively quickly. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
The one question I got is, what are the statutory minimums that were required by state law to fund the courts and the judicial system and the probation offices? Do you know what those numbers are offhand?
So, Mr. Chairman, that's a big question because there's no set statutory minimum writ large. There are specific formulaic requirements that we have. But a lot of what the relationship between the court and the county is what local needs are intended to be met and what local demands are being faced. And obviously, navigating that in a data-driven way is the best way to be most efficient about it. we did a survey of the court system to look at various decisions made in various counties. And Vanessa, I don't know if there's anything you'd add to this based on that inquiry.
No, I think I'd just reiterate that there are very few in statute requirements that dictate the state and county relationship. I'd point to the statutory caseload ratios and the requirement to fund certain percentages of judicial salaries. But outside of that, Mr. Chair, each county does it a little bit differently. But generally speaking, when we look at how the courts interact with the county's budget processes, it is fairly similar in that the court and the county have a collaborative relationship and the county sets the court's budget.
No, I get that, but I'm looking at the ratio between the state support and the county support, which is getting lopsided, right? So is it because the counties keep up making up the difference, so the state doesn't see the need to increase funding because the counties always fill the funding gap to keep the courts funded, or is it the other way around, where the state is basically saying this is their minimum obligation and the county's got to make up the difference?
Yeah,
What I'm trying to get at is I'm looking at a forcing function, for lack of a better term, not to use the courts as a political pawn, but if the courts don't get the sufficient funding from the counties, would that entice the courts to go to the state to tell the state that they need to increase funding to fund the courts?
The lack of state support for the judiciary has been a concern for obvious reasons and what you saw there. I think that just it seems as though over time the counties have been responding to these needs in a way that the state's not being asked to respond to those needs. And so I don't think there's been a kind of a strategic focus on moving specific expenses from the county to the state, which could be effective at releasing some of that burden. A lot of the bills we see are kind of authorizing things to occur locally and not necessarily putting money associated with them. And it would be helpful if there was more focus by the state side at looking county by county and saying, all right, we're going to relieve the county general fund of X, Y, and Z expenses, which could be controlled by them. Did you have anything to add to that, Vanessa?
I don't think so.
Yeah, but what you put your finger on, though, Mr. Chairman, it is a concern that has been growing among your colleague counties.
We're not allowed to raise fines at the county level. We have some limited ability to raise fees. The clerk can do certain fee increases related to procedural type stuff, but not court costs related to the actual case, right? That's got to come from the state. So we're kind of, the state's pigeonholing us on the ability to generate revenue by not allowing us to establish, and I understand that because they want uniformity across the state so everybody pays the same fine. Got it. But then at the same time, if the costs of administering the courts are going up and the counties are eating the cost, we do need some kind of an offset from the state.
Yes, sir.
As I saw, that slide right there, I hate that slide. I'll tell you that right now. I really hate that slide. I mean, I really do. I mean, that's an embarrassing slide, so I mean, that's the frustration, and I get it. So I mean, look at us, and what's really startling there is the property value ratio actually impacts it just as much as the tax rate does. So even though we have a higher tax rate due to the values of the property, we're only generating $2.67. That's what's killing us. Anyways, that's another problem for an economic discussion on another work session. But I mean, I'm really trying to find a way, forcing function to force and I don't want to use I do want to use the court as a pawn. Let me just be honest. I'm not going to say as a way to get them to scream through the Supreme Court to force the legislature to fund the courts more. I mean, so if we knew what the minimum was to fund the court and we say, hey, this year we're only going to fund the court this much, and I know Judge Thorne's going to go screaming about it, which is what I want him to do, and get get the Supreme Court to go to the legislature and the governor to try to increase the funding, because we're clearly disproportionately bearing the majority of the burden for it. And I know states shared revenue, and I know from every fine, a portion goes to the state. So the state's making money off of those fines and getting a percentage of those. Some of it stays local, but I think it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Am I wrong? If I recall correctly? Mr.
I
Crowley?
was just going to say, the amount of fines that the court imposes that aren't ever collected is enough to like solve all our budget problems forever, right? People don't pay their fines. Right?
Well, they're usually reduced to a form of judgment at the end of a criminal case, for example, and then the state can, or the county can collect those fines through things like tax intercepts. And so you have a judgment against you, and that's, I think, through it's called the FAIR program. Is that what it's called?
That's correct.
Yeah, so there's mechanisms out there to do that, but part of the problem is that this goes back to the Arizona Constitution and how it's set up. So you set up a general jurisdiction court, which is the Superior Court of Arizona, in and for Cochise County or in and for La Paz County or Pima County. And then, back in 1912, when they started this whole thing, the idea was that we're going to impose these, but then the local counties are going to fund the various functions. But as you know, from being in the legislature, sometimes the legislature likes to pass bills that are commonly known as unfunded mandates. I was at a meeting with the other presiding judges a couple of weeks ago, and one of the bills, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but one of the bills was to allow jury trials for divorce cases and any other subsequent family law kinds of cases. And if the parties were unrepresented by counsel and they wanted a lawyer, then we were supposed to appoint a lawyer for each of the people in a family law case. But there was no funding mandate. So, it wasn't clear who was going to pay a local divorce lawyer to represent one or the other. And I don't think the bill's going anywhere, but these are the kinds of things, these are the challenges that we have, and the tension between the county funding and the state funding.
Further elaborate on that, Mr. Crosby, it's a vicious cycle in that when somebody doesn't pay a fine that's been assessed and the court takes action, they issue a warrant for their arrest in order to show cause, to bring that person in, to review their financial status and determine if, in fact, they can pay something. It involves arrest warrants. It involves incarceration in jail, which we have been told to stand down on because of the number of people in jail and those costs. So it's a vicious cycle in that respect, as well as the, in a few minutes when I present some of my information, we are dealing with massive caseloads. And in order to go back and dig into those archives to look at that money and to pursue that money, it becomes a personnel deficit. We just don't have the people to do it.
Chairman, I have a summary of the fines and fees that probation collected and how
Oh,
it's
is that okay?
allocated. I just handed
Oh,
it to
yeah.
Mr. Crosby a few minutes ago.
I was just,
Mr. Chairman, I think the answer to a part of one of your question is there are ratios of adult probationers to probation officers, and that's what one of the slides was talking about a minute ago. I don't know what that number is. I think it's 60 adult probationers per probation, 65 to 1, but we regularly get probation officers that have 80 or...
Well, and we have vacancies, so supervisors are covering caseloads. We have one officer covering multiple caseloads, so it's
challenging.
challenging.
I don't grab this. These are all the various accounts that the fines are distributed through. That's
Correct.
basically-
It's how it's allocated, but we provided, I believe Nielsen provided you a summary of all of that previously as well.
And I'm happy to review that with you.
Yeah, let's move on. Whose is this? Is this yours, Judge?
Well, that's your.
Oh,
but
sorry.
this one-
No. You're going to brief. You're going to brief this.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
I'm gonna start.
Go ahead.
And just kind of.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Wherever you are.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Okay. Well, good afternoon again. most of this is for the three of you to understand kind of where we're coming from as the court system and how we do what we do and what we're required to do. But another big part of this is for the folks who are listening in who might be interested and don't kind of have the big picture. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but forgive me if I do. After I talk, we're going to hear from Rachel Gray, who's our Chief Deputy Clerk. Amy Hunley sends her regrets. She's not feeling well and has been home for the past couple of days. Then Judge Kerfman's going to talk about what our Justice of the Peace courts do and their responsibilities. Then our juvenile presiding judge, Sherry Bannon, is going to talk to you about the juvenile court, not only from the juvenile delinquents, but also about dependencies and that side of the house. And then we're going to hear from April Sadoff, who's our chief deputy probation officer right now, and she's going to be our chief deputy next week. Our chief is Armando Arias, who served our county for decades, and he's finally getting a well-deserved retirement. I think at the end of this week is his last day. Yeah, and so she's going to start up on Monday, and she's going to talk to you about adult and juvenile probation. Her chief juvenile probation officer, Sarah Hembry, is here listening in, as well as Tracy Romero, our human resources person for the courts, and Rita Shipley, who handles our financing. And we're all here to be able to answer any questions you might have about what it is we do. My marching orders come from Chief Justice Ann Scott Timmer, who's our new Supreme Court Chief Justice. And so she came up with her strategic agenda for Arizona courts, and here's how we want you to run the courts. And I say, okay, I do what I'm told when it comes from somebody higher than me, and she's higher than me in the pecking order. So she laid out a 5-part strategic agenda that has 32 subparts, and I'm not going to spend a bunch of time talking about that. And a lot of it is, frankly, it's her goals, and some of it is, I don't mean to disrespect by saying corporate speak, but it's just kind of vague things. And so I'm going to talk to you about what those goals are and how we're trying to implement them here. And the lens through which I shine her goals for us is a very simple idea that I came up with because I'm often a very simple guy, which is people, places, and things. So how do we implement her strategy into the folks that we have working for us and the places that people come to work and to get justice served, and what kind of things do we need to accomplish those goals? Okay, number one is, and you guys can, if you want to go deep on this, go to the Arizona Supreme Court website, look up the strategic agenda for 2025, and it's all there if you're really interested in it. Number one is expanding and promoting access to justice. This talks about ensuring self-represented litigants, which is roughly 90% of the folks that we have lawyers. How do we get them access to justice? This includes people with limited English proficiencies, getting them court interpreters for almost any language you can speak that you can think of, including American Sign Language. We've had some of those folks. And so how do we do that? That also includes accessing courts remotely. So you don't have to drive from San Simon to Bisbee or Sierra Vista to file some pleadings. We have self-help centers in almost every area, and we'll get to that in a minute, but in every local library that has a computer, you can go there and access the computer. So if you're in Douglas, you can go there. If you're in Sierra Vista, et cetera, Wilcox. We have these self-help centers, and we also have a pretty robust self-help center on our website that Amy Hunley and Rachel manage along with our law librarian, and that's kind of the portal that people can use to get information NILSA has been really good about working with Amy and Rachel and Veronica Olivares, who is our law librarian, to come up with videos for folks so they can watch a video on how to file for a divorce or how to get child support or something like that. The second goal for Chief Justice Timmer is maintaining public trust and confidence in the judicial branch of government. This is something that we want the public to feel confident that when they come in and we listen to their case, that whether we agree with them or not, that we've heard their case and we've decided the case, and they can have a record to pick up on appeal if they want to. And part of this is by encouraging things like civics in school, and engaging in outreach programs like we do. We have school tours that come through and tour the courthouse, and people from court security, for example, who act as a docent, who can take them around and they show them the old jail on the third floor and like that. The third goal is, again, this has a bunch of subparts. I'm trying to get through this quickly because a lot of people have a lot of information to tell you. Protecting children, families, and communities. This focuses on probation mostly and ensuring that criminal defendants have accountability, and we can ensure that they are paying their fines or paying their restitution. This also includes coming up with a robust pretrial services to make sure that if we're going to release somebody back in our custody into our community who have been in custody, that they're being supervised, that they show up for court and do what they're supposed to do. This also includes enhancing access to family court services like family conciliation court or dependency. Over on the juvenile side, that people have access to things like counseling. As you might imagine, if the government wants to come along and take away your children, it's usually because A, you have a drug or alcohol problem, B, you have some kind of mental health problem, or C, probably C, all of the above. So we try to hook people up with mental health services and substance abuse. And so that, the idea is usually we want to reunify the family if possible so that kids can grow up with parents who are sane and sober and otherwise productive. Our fourth goal is advancing judicial branch excellence and innovation. This comes back to judge training and training for staff and recruiting and retraining and retaining staff. But this also includes things like using information technology and artificial intelligence, something I had the opportunity to talk with the chairman about at lunch last week. And that's one of our goals. That also includes training for probation officers for the juvenile and adult side and getting them the resources they need, because there's some folks out there that think, well, if you break the law, you commit a felony, you should go to prison. It's not quite that easy. If somebody goes to prison, they're not paying their child support, they're not paying taxes, they're not engaging in the community. And so many people get probation. And so we try to make the probation officers have what they need so that they can reintegrate with our society, and get back to work. The final goal for Justice Timmer is enhancing professionalism and leadership within our justice system. This is developing job training for judges, judge training, and also workforce development for entry-level clerks and positions. I came in, Chairman, you weren't here, and you weren't here, Supervisor Gomez, but last year during our budget presentation, I brought in our rules of procedure for all kinds of cases that we have, and you probably remember my little stunt where I brought it in. Yeah, that's what the clerk of the courts have to know, all those rules and how they integrate and what people need and what kind of paperwork they need. And it's a pretty tough job, and we don't pay them a ton of money when they start, but we want to keep them here and retain them, because when you lose that institutional knowledge, it takes a long time to get somebody else up to speed on what they do. So again, people, places, and things is, we got to the community outreach already. Okay, great. We want to recruit and retain the best people we can to staff our Superior Court, our Justice Courts, Court Administration, and our Probation Department. When you talk about the courts, Court Administration is kind of the hub around which everything else rotates. And so you have the clerk of the Superior Court, you have the probation department, and you have court administration. And those are sort of the three sides of the triangle that keep us safe and dispense justice. The facilities where we work and where constituents come should be clean, and they should be attractive, and they should reflect the seriousness and the dignity that people deserve when they have some serious business to do. If you go to a restaurant that you heard about that has great food, that might be great, but if the bathroom's dirty and the parking lot's dirty and the waiter has dirty fingernails, I don't know if you want to eat there or not. I know I don't, but you get the idea. The things our employees need include everything from pens to vehicles. We have some vehicles that we use to transport juveniles, for example, up to detention facility in Pinal County where we contract because we don't have a detention facility. And these vehicles have close to 200,000 miles on them. This creates liability problems if the thing breaks down on the side of the road somewhere in July with a probation officer and a kid in the back. You see where I'm going with this. So that's what I'm doing. Our court administration of the foundation behind the gavel thinks you're going along here really great about doing that. There's a community outreach. There's who we are. We have 6 divisions. Well, we have 7 in case we need a conflict case heard by somebody else. But we have 6. We have 5 elected, and Judge Bannon is pro tem. We have 212 employees, and so it's a lot. We're a big chunk of the Cochise County government, but, you know, you said something, Chairman Antonori, when I swore you in here a couple of months ago, which was that you want to make sure that we use our resources that are available to us for critical functions of government. Well, the justice system is the critical function of government, making sure that our streets stay safe from criminals and that people have a place to go where they can resolve disputes without having to get into fisticuffs with each other, and that it's fairly dispensed. So I don't mean to disparage any of the other departments that we have, but our justice system is the critical function of government that helps preserve our rights that we have as Arizona residents and Americans. So that being said, who is next?
Me.
Rachel Gray. Tell about
Rachel Gray. Good afternoon. Good to see some of you again and to meet others that I haven't met before. And again, Amy does send her regards, and she's sad that she could not be here, but she is perfectly incapable of being here today. So I'll talk a little bit about the clerk's office and some of the roles that we have there in Superior Court in particular. We are the official record keeper for the Superior Court. All the case types, every document that comes through Superior Court comes through our office. We are also the financial officer for the Superior Court system, so the fines and fees, any of the restitution payments, any of that thing, we process those and make sure they also get back out to the victims as we receive them. We're the jury commissioner for Cochise County, and we're also the probate registrar handling estates, guardianships, mental health, those kind of cases. We support nearly every function of the judicial system. We have to work very closely with all the judges. We have to work closely with the lower jurisdiction courts, with probation, private attorneys, also the county attorneys in every capacity, and the jail to make sure they're receiving the documents they need to transport prisoners, to send them to probation, or even send them to DOC if needed. Last year, we assisted over 22,000 customers in both our locations. So we have a location in Bisbee Superior Court and Sierra Vista Superior Court. We take tens and thousands, and that's not an exaggeration, of phone calls and emails that we have to handle. We also issue marriage license. We process child support orders. We issue warrants that are ordered by the judges in cases, and then we make sure and get all that reported to DPS, especially because some of those background and criminal histories affect whether someone can buy a firearm, which of course, if you shouldn't have one, we don't want you to have one. As far as documents filed, we process over 100,000 documents on an annual basis. We do that both in paper and electronic filing. And sometimes people think with electronic filing, that means it's just kind of automatic, but we are still required to review all of that and make sure it is as it should be. We have courtroom clerks. They swear in the witnesses. They record all official minutes within the court hearing. And then we also have to manage and present all the exhibits in a court hearing. And as Judge Thorne mentioned, we have to comply with over 500 statutes and court rules. So we have to make sure that our clerks are well trained, that they understand the processes. And it takes a minimum of 6 weeks just to get a clerk to where they can operate at any point on their own. So it takes a very high level. We do consider ourselves the backbone of the court, and we have to make sure that we're accessible, that we're accurate, and we're timely. And that's all I have today. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah. Well, you enjoy your job.
I love my job. I enjoy getting up every day and coming to work. Yeah.
Take a question. So the other, I guess, bigger counties have databases and they have systems like we've been seeing how the filings have been going in certain cases over the past couple of weeks, where immediately upon filing that document is available to the public in those counties. Do we have that ability in Cochise County?
We do have public access that is when we do a document and put it into Ajax, which is our case management system. It should be uploaded and I'm not coming up with the right word, within 24 hours. I can tell you that Amy and I and Nelsa are working together on a website for high profile cases so that there's easier access that other bigger counties have. So I would say within the next year or so we'll have that.
And if I may add to that, other counties such as Maricopa and Pima, they have their own robust IT department and they have their own case management system aside from the administrative office of the courts, which most of the counties use, such as us. And so their response time is real time versus ours takes about 24 hours. It has to go up to the network for the administrative office of the courts, and then it's pushed over to reflect on public access. So there can be a delay. Some users are allowed to purchase the subscription through the administrative office of the courts for e-access. So that just gives you a little bit more of more details on some of the documents that are available to the public.
But still take time.
I mean, we copy paste some of what they've done there, and they've put a level of effort into developing that system. Is there somebody that can come down here and help us set the system up here for a fraction of the cost because they already figured out how to do it?
You mean
no, he's the case management system, and I'm looking at interim deputy county administrator Joe Casey, because I know these are conversations that we've had in the past to try to enhance our service and reduce some of that cost for not only our equipment from the state, but also our case management system, how we can build something that is more efficient for our use. And so I'll turn over to...
well, real quick, do you have your own IT department, or do you use our IT department?
We have 2 employees, but our employees are more of liaisons between the state and the county. And so we rely heavily on both the county and the state to assist us in our day-to-day operations.
Yeah, one of the things that's took me a while to wrap my head around is that the administrative office of the courts requires the counties to pay for things like printers and computers and the use of the database that AOC manages, and we don't really have a choice in that. So, for example, all the computers, and some of which are pretty old, in the clerk's office, because they are state employees, and I think the probation department, if I'm not mistaken.
We have state computers and county computers.
Yeah, so there's this odd, some are state computers, some are odd, some are county computers. But when I first started, I wanted to print some things out because I like reading paper instead of looking at screens. And so I offered to just bring in my printer from home and plug it into my computer. And oh no, you can't do that. You have to have a special printer that comes, and you have to get a license from the state. And so they're very for information. I'm sure it's for security purposes. But to answer your question, unlike Maricopa, if you go to look at a Maricopa County case, you can, for some cases, look at minute entries that have been entered. You can look at pleadings that were filed and look at the documents. You can't do that here. You can see on public access that a document has been filed, but you can't look at that document and see what the document says. You can if you come down to the court, and we have a special computer that's set aside so you can look into, I think it's Ajax or one of our.
What is the reason for that? Why can't you do that though?
We just never had the money to set aside to come up with our own database.
I mean, if it's a PDF file, an attorney writes a brief and he uploads a PDF file. I mean, we do it here, all the agendas, everything. There's a link, you click on it, boom, it opens the PDF file.
I don't know the answer to it, but I can get the answer to you pretty soon. Oh, you got the answer? I think it's probably security and confidentiality.
So,
it's a public document.
It's case type specific.
Right.
So we are bound by the Supreme Court rules of the state, and we have administrative orders also from Justice Timmer and Code of Judicial Administration, others that allow some case types to be on public access and some that
I get the juvenile piece, I get that, but all the other criminal stuff, civil stuff, divorces, that's all public.
Yeah, so divorces are not documents that the Supreme Court allows to be on public access.
Talking about.
Well, it's just not there.
I have done, without going into detail, research on political opponents, and I've been able to find all sorts of stuff on them. So it's available publicly. So I don't understand.
Maybe we're not allowed to put it on public access. Now you can access some other documents via other means. Mental health is another case.
Yeah, I get
highly
that.
secure. Guardianships.
Minors, stuff dealing with minors.
Yeah, sexual exploitation of a minor is a touchy subject. So, right, and I think Judge Thorne just said it. It's way above our pay grade, and it's what's mandated by the Supreme Court.
But this is something that
I'm hearing. I'm sorry, Judge. I'm hearing from lawyers from other counties complain that Cochise County's system doesn't allow them access to records and documents like they get in other counties.
So I would encourage.
That's why I'm trying to find out why. Yeah. Why is that?
And I would encourage you to have those attorneys call me so I can find out what the problem
is.
Yeah,
I will.
I would be happy.
They're saying it's a something with the system that they can file in Maricopa County, or they can see their opposing counsel files and get an email that's saying, hey, your opposing counsel just filed, boom, then they got the file, right? They can look it up and read the brief. I mean, it doesn't go through anybody. It's just an automated system.
If you don't mind, I'll walk you through. Let's say Judge Thorne has a nasty divorce case happening in his court. He issues an order that
Yeah, she added that last part just in time.
In his part, not personally. But he issues an order in that case. It gets e-filed with the clerk's office. The clerk's office processes it. Then we distribute it to all parties in the clerk's office. So products of the court, we do send to all parties. Petitions, things that are filed by the parties are required to be served by the party.
Okay. All right.
Minute entries, same thing.
All right. I'm sorry, Judge. You were going to
No, I was just going to say, I've been down here since 2001. And I was amused at first by how, let's say, quaint it is down here sometimes with the court system. And one of my goals as the presiding judge, and this is what I told then Vice Chief Timmer and Chief Brutinel, is that I wanted to try to drag Cochise County kicking and screaming into the 21st century, and my goal is to do that by the first third of the 21st century. I talked to Joe about some of these ideas Where if we can harness the technology that exists today, then folks can show up to court without ever leaving their house. You can have smaller courtrooms that don't need, if you have more technology, then you don't need as much space because people are appearing virtually. I had a trial a few months ago where everybody appeared by Zoom. It was great. There was a guy in New Mexico, there was a lady in Tennessee, there were some witnesses in Sierra Vista, there was a lawyer in Phoenix and a lawyer in Tucson. It worked out well. That's the wave of the future. Judge Bannon's done a bunch of research into this area, and if you can have artificial intelligence, and this is something I talked about with Joe, that instead of answering questions on your website that asks you questions on your website, one of the problems that people have is they don't have they don't understand the language that they need to get something done. So they know they want to get a divorce. They don't know they have to file a petition for dissolution of marriage, and everybody knows what a divorce is. Everybody knows I want to see my kids more. They don't know they have to file a petition to establish parenting time, legal decision-making, and modified child support. So we're stuck with the language that the legislature gave us as far as these are what we have to do. But if you can tell an AI chatbot, my daughter dropped off the kids and I can't get a hold of her and I don't know where the dad is and I need to get these kids enrolled in school, then the chatbot will know, oh, you need a guardianship for a minor. What are their names? And this is something you and I were speaking about. What are their names? What are their dates of birth? And they can just input all that information into all the forms that we need to do it instead of having folks having to fill out the same information over and over again, and it spits it out, and how do you want to pay for this, and it's done. That's what we're trying to do here. So to answer your question, yeah, that's on our agenda to make everything more transparent and more accessible when it's not prohibited by court rules from doing so.
And I can't remember if it was you on the emails or Ms. Hunley was on the emails. A certain reporter is asking for training records, and you guys sent them a $1,700 bill on that. So that's something I was curious about. What is the grounds if it's a digital document, or it's why $1,700? Why not just whatever the amount of time it takes you to look it up or whatever?
So for actually non-commercial purposes, we don't charge for our time. We're charging for the per page fee of 50 cents, which is another fee that's mandated.
You charge 50 cents?
Digitally, it's mandated in
Get out of here.
legislation.
Who mandates that?
The legislator in this point, I believe.
I don't think so.
Yes, Chapter 12-284.
What is it again?
12-284, which sets out the fees that the clerk's office must charge.
I thought that was for a printer copy machine copy.
Electronic as well. Yeah.
Okay. Who's next? Who's next? Yeah.
Judge Kirschman.
Judge Kerf. Judge.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to present some information to you on behalf of the JPs, the Justice of the Peaces in Cochise County. There are 6 justice courts listed here, the judges that hold the position of each of those JP courts. I didn't get an opportunity to submit. Didn't understand, I guess, what I needed to do. So I've given each of you a packet at the top of its responsibility and case management for a Cochise County Justice of the Peace, and each of you have that. I broke it down quite a bit, but I'm going to go through this pretty quickly so that you get a true feel for what the justice courts do on behalf of the judiciary in Cochise County. Civil traffic, juvenile hearings, criminal traffic matters, criminal misdemeanors. So there's a differential between, obviously, a criminal case such as shoplifting as a criminal traffic would be a DUI. They both carry the same.
Or 90 and a 35.
There you go.
Good name.
91% of the people that will come to court, as per the AOC, the administrative offices of the court at the Supreme Court, 91% of the people that will come before a court system will be before a limited jurisdiction court, and that being justice courts. In 2024, 6 JPs and 35 clerks handled 41,000 cases in Cochise County. We do felony IAs. We do preliminary hearings regarding felonies. In custodies, every day we do in custodies, mandated by Rule 4. They have to be done within 24 hours. Everyone who is arrested and is put in custody, they have to be seen within 24 hours. And there's a whole array of things that we have to do to accommodate that in custody. And that includes the felony cases as well. I put evidentiary hearings that are pre-trial. We do both bench trials through appeals until the appeals then are transferred to Superior Court. Jury trials, as the penalties, the mandated penalties on mandatory sentencing, on DUIs and stuff like that, as it goes up, we see a lot more demand for jury trials because they have that right. It's by statute they have that right, and we conduct those as well. Restitution orders that follow criminal matters. These are people within our community that are victims that have suffered an economic loss, and the restitution has been ordered. That is pursued by the court. It is collected by the court and distributed by the JPs. That includes garnishment hearings as well to garnish people's wages for the payment of that. Search warrants, on call 24 hours a day. If I seem a little bit half asleep, I issued 4 of them over the weekend. One at 2 o'clock in the morning. They were back at my house at 5 o'clock Sunday morning, the very next morning. I indicated here, there's not a day of the week or an hour of a day that a justice of the peace has not issued a search warrant. It's continuous. It just goes on forever. Long-form complaints, those are sworn in by law enforcement officers. Protective orders, orders of protection and injunctions against harassment, multifaceted. Everything from the initial filing of the request to pre-issuance hearings to post-issuance hearings for all the things that are involved there. And I should add that every single one of these things that I have listed, they are all multifaceted, and I'd be willing to answer any questions about any one of those specifically. On the civil side, we do small claims up to $3,500. There is some legislature
I tried raising that 4 times when I was in the legislature.
Well, they're looking at $7,500 again, so we'll see where that goes. Civil suits between parties, up to $10,000. Obviously, to the prevailing parties, they're wanting to get paid. They're wanting to pursue garnishment and other such things. We go into the whole world of evictions with the initial filings, the hearings, the trials, the writs pertaining to the forcible detainers. All of that are the functions of the justice courts. The justice courts are a very key and a very essential part of the judicial branch of government for Cochise County, handling the lion's share portion of the filings.
So 41,000 cases, that's a 1/3 of the population of this county, so I know all those weren't our.
41,358 cases in 2024.
Yeah, I got you. That's 1/3 of the population. So I'm assuming there's a sizable number of people that you see that are not from Cochise County.
Absolutely, and that has its challenges in and of itself. Right. As Judge Thorne was talking about, is people being able to appear virtually or telephonically. The thing I always liked about people appearing telephonically, it's always classic when you hear the toilet flush during the proceeding.
I mean, what is the general ratio? Is it?
Well, as we've indicated here, with 35 clerks, it's about 1,200. Oh, as far as in-state, out-of-state?
In-county, out-of-county.
I don't have those numbers. Obviously, the interstate would be majority out of county and even out of state, which those to get those people
I
back.
mean, for like Wilcox and Benson, I-10, I'm sure you're getting a lot of people.
That's where the number comes from. JP4 is, Trevor Ward's is the busiest justice of the peace in the state.
Because I-10.
Now there's a caveat to that, and let me qualify
Because all the
that.
state troopers put all their cases in those justice courts.
Exactly. That's
Trucker
exactly.
violations, the speeding.
Yep.
JP4, the Wilcox Justice of the Peace, this is 8,778 cases, but in comparison to the full-time non-judicial personnel of 4, that puts a ratio on that court at 2195, almost 2,200 cases. And in this statistical document that I provided to you, you'll see that's number 1 in the state of Arizona. Wow. As far as the number of cases that justice court, and that's in our county.
Is it because we got aggressive state troopers out there, or is it just...
It's because there's a bunch of wide open spaces between New Mexico and Tucson where you go 100 miles an hour and who cares?
Yeah, yeah.
And those cases,
They used to write the wasting resources tickets so you didn't have to keep the judges up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing speeding cases. So.
And we can talk about traffic cases, but they are multifaceted. They are not a simple matter, and the manner of time that's put into those cases as well. As you can see, those are the 5 precincts on that, the 6 precincts. 5 of those are co-located with city. Obviously, Bowie, there's no city magistrate.
We do IGAs on that with these guys?
Yeah.
Correct.
Where they fill
The
in
county has entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the cities, and the cities provide a
We
certain
can
amount.
charge
of
more
money
for
as
that, can't we?
And we've already discussing that is actually to revisit that.
About that.
And for myself and Sierra Vista, I've already gone back to Chuck Patusik, and we're trying to get some more money there.
All right.
One other thing real quick I want to go over is state mandates. As Rachel Gray made reference to, when the state says this is what we have to do, they pass a law, that's what we have to do. I provided you with a document pertaining to the filing of sealing the court's records. You were talking about that a little bit. You can file a petition to seal the court's records under, it's kind of interesting, it's under Title 13, and it's 911. So I guess it's an emergency to seal your court records. There are some specific requirements, but in Sierra Vista, 2023, 35, 38, and 2024, we've already done 14 this year in Sierra Vista, a mandate of 2 to 4 hours of paperwork. Now, we're talking about cases that are already closed. These cases are done. Everything is done. And we're going back to 20-year-old cases, dragging them out of the archives.
Give me a quick reason why. Why would they want them sealed?
Okay, under the statute, unfortunately, there's a portion of it I don't agree with, but it is the state law. It actually allows the individual to lie. The defendant can lie about their previous criminal history. If they are filling out a job application, if you read the statute under 13.911, it says that they don't have to mention that. Even if they've asked for it, they can say that has been sealed and that it does not have to be disclosed by them. Student housing, government loans, student loans. There's a whole array of things that would be advantageous. And that's what promoted the state legislature and prompted them to go forward with that, saying that this would help people get
They got to get their
employment.
previous court record sealed so somebody just can't arbitrarily do a search and find it. And
Now, if it's already on public record, it's out there. There's
Yeah.
no withdrawal of that information. It does require judges to be very outgoing in regards to how to handle these cases. I enclosed 2 documents. One is a flow chart that I developed to assist clerical staff in dealing with these. The other document is a checklist that I developed as well. We are trying to do everything we can as fast as we can, as accurately as we can.
Gotcha.
This particular matter has multiple mandatory time restraints to it. It came upon us, and now we have to deal with it. And the staffing requirements are continuously being stressed to do this. 41,000 cases in the
I saw that number. That's why
where 91% of the people going to court will appear is in a limited jurisdiction, the Justice of the Peace Courts.
Gotcha.
And that's by statewide numbers from the AOC.
Most of them end up on probation, I'm sure.
We don't have,
Segue.
Let me add to that. We don't have probation,
Okay,
not
I'm just-
adult probation at our disposal. We do probation, it's unsupervised, and we do it ourselves. But we do have some very interesting interaction with probation that they may want to mention.
All right, let's go to probation next. I was trying to segue there.
Sure, thank you.
I'm sorry. Did I get it out of order?
No, that's fine.
No, I think we made you out of order. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
okay.
I'm Judge Terry Bannon, presiding
Sure.
juvenile judge. So what I do in juvenile court with the support of a team of juvenile probation officers who I always say are the absolute very best in the state. And I would put that up against any county, any size, because these are truly dedicated individuals who do an outstanding job. What we do is try to intercept the juvenile's behavior before it escalates so that it affects the community in even more detrimental ways. We try to engage the family in assisting this juvenile to redirect the behavior. We hold the juveniles and the parents accountable through a series of consequences in which we make both participate. We have the consequences are commensurate with the offense, and we use a tiered approach that starts with a penalty only, then we'll go to diversion. Hopefully they're successful when they complete their diversion. If they don't, then we revoke them, and they don't have the opportunity to get that offense off their record until they turn 18 and make a formal request to do so. We have standard probation, intensive probation, and we also have the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections, which is available to us when all other options fail. We have a series of programs that we have initiated in the court and in the juvenile probation office, I should say, and some of them are called to consider the harm. They're really designed to get the juvenile to engage in rethinking their behavior, redirecting their path. We have them accountable on a restitution level. We have them engaged in a fentanyl education class, online victim impact panels. If they have a victim where they have offended, if they owe restitution, they need to pay their restitution. And we've just begun a restitution assistance program with a grant from the state, which enables juveniles to go out and earn a minimum wage income to pay towards their restitution. We're going to solicit more money from the state for that program. They gave us a modest sum of money of $8,000, but it was better than nothing. And we have some community support that allows the juveniles to go and work on their property with waivers of liability so that we can get that restitution paid, because that is a part of making that juvenile a part of his community. When you pay your debts in the community you live, you hold your head up high. I made a mistake. I paid for my mistake. I'm back in this community, and I'm a functioning member in this community. We have a Strengthening Families program, which parents must attend. We refer juveniles. We don't pay for this necessarily. These are all outsourced for psychoeducational and psychosexual evaluations. And we've done a couple of things that are really innovative in the state, and I appreciate, I need to say this, I appreciate my presiding judge for being always so supportive of everything I bring to him regarding juvenile probation. And I need to thank this board, because this board has been tremendously supportive of this particular court on anything I've asked for juvenile services. And so what we've done is we've started a cell phone education class, because some parents don't know what their kids are doing on their cell phones. They're looking at apps. They think it's just a Wordle, but it's not. It's a segue to child porn. And now we have a tremendous increase in cases where we have class 2 felonies, juveniles 13, 14, 11, 10, engaging in child pornography, either by viewing it or placing themselves in that child pornography stream. So that's really been something that we've been combating, and I'm bringing to the attention of AOC repeatedly and repeatedly, and I will knock on that door until that door opens to get that addressed. And one thing I also want to say is that for anybody who thinks what happens in juvenile court is something that is just minor, it isn't minor. And what we've had to do, and we started it 2 or 3 years ago, is a peer support where we have joined with CCSO, which was very thoughtful of them to allow us to avail ourselves of their therapists in the event we have particularly disturbing cases or when we have juveniles die. And we've had many juveniles die in the last few years. Some suicide by cop, some overdose, some killed on a highway crossing the street. We've had some of them murdered. We've had a lot of deaths on our caseload, and it has affected us profoundly. So we have that peer support. I can't say we haven't used it, and I can say it's been an asset to us. We also meet monthly, and this is really for one of the benefits is for the board. We every month autopsy how we can reduce our detention costs. We know it's a cost. We recognize that. I have no heartburn at closing the detention center. That was a right economic move. And we know that we still cost you a lot of money through detention. We try to mitigate that every single way that we can. And the next step we're going to do is engage in a process with the county attorney's office to see if they can give us an on-call prosecutor when we get a juvenile who's on the verge of getting detained, if we can have that prosecutor maybe look at the facts of the case and say, I will be filing a petition on this. You need to detain that juvenile or I will not, and stop the transportation before it starts. Before they leave that facility, before detention transport gets on the road, we're going to try and stop that transport if we can so that we're not costing you any more money in detention. I appreciate everything you've done. You've done a lot. And you've never said no. And I really need to thank you face to face for that. It means a lot. We're very passionate about what we do. We don't stop. There's only, I think, 4 probation officers. And we resolve the majority of our cases through diversion. And that diversion program that we have has been recognized at the state level for how valuable it is, how thorough it is, how accomplished it is. And the other thing I brought up to the attention of to my presiding judge is that I said it before, is that we're going to get body cams for a couple of our surveillance officers because my strong belief is if they're carrying a gun and a badge, they need a body camera. So we're going to do that too. We are moving. We're really progressing, and we work hard to make it the best juvenile probation department in the state. We're not big self-promoters, but I am here today promoting them, and they deserve it. Thank you.
Very much for your diligence and that concern.
Thank you so
Do you
much.
have a comment?
You know, we kind of talked briefly. One of the big problems with juvenile issues is there's no jobs. You know, and I look at Douglas as an extreme example of what happens when you had a smelter close and you had a very mafia cartel kind of operation going, and nobody stepped in to provide an industry for that community, which was at one point the 3rd largest city in Arizona. So to me, economic development is crucial to being able to provide an alternative. I mean, I grew up with the guys who, there was nothing else to do, so you got involved, and they made money, and they had planes, and but then they got caught. And then it just, migrated down. Well, these are still our leaders in our community, ex-judges and whatever, and look what they do. So it's okay for me to partake in this kind of criminal activity. So when you don't have that economic ability to give them a choice, jobs, to be able to stay in the community, that's on us too. We have to start looking really hard at how we can do that so that it lessens that opportunity to go into crime.
I absolutely agree with you. I am very much in favor of more economic development, and I am very much in favor of the efforts that we're making to try and bring jobs, industry, make this place a destination because it's a worthwhile destination. It offers everything you want, and a lot of the stuff you don't. It's not here. So that's great. This is why it can be that place. If we work hard to make it that place, it can be that place. And I want these juveniles to be able to remain in their community and stay focused and be productive and hold their head up high. It is important to them. They cannot lose faith in their community, and their community cannot lose faith in them. We need to assist.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you.
Let's go to now it's probation time, right?
Probation on the adult side.
All right, adult side.
Judge Bannon and I, and thank you again for having us here. Judge Bannon and I didn't share notes, and my first line is, I'm proud to say that we have the best probation thing, and I wholeheartedly believe that. For those who aren't familiar what probation even is, it's a sentencing option that's imposed by the court. Essentially, you complete your terms and conditions of probation, you don't go to prison, and those are standardized conditions across the state. However, the court may impose additional conditions such as no alcohol consumption, sex offender conditions, intensive probation supervision, victim-related conditions, treatment requirements. Becoming a probation officer isn't easy, nor should it be. Our officers are highly trained professionals who meet strict qualifications. You have to have a bachelor's degree. Extensive background test or checking psychological exam.
Do you get post certified or no?
We don't.
You don't.
No, we're certified peace officers. We carry guns, but no, we're not post certified.
Okay.
They have to undergo psychological exams, home visits. Once hired, we do attend the probation officer certification academy. That's in Phoenix. The Defensive Tactics Academy, also in Phoenix. Our Firearms Academy is hosted statewide. And then, of course, in-house administrative and field training. And ongoing training is required every year to maintain certification and stay current with evolving practices and legal standards. Their slideshow not working.
No, the clicker is not working. You said that's thank you.
So our officers do far more than monitor probationers. They help reshape lives. Many probationers have never had structure or accountability when it comes to their time, finances, families, or commitments, as Judge Thorne was previously speaking on. Our officers fill that gap, helping them build better habits while prioritizing community safety. Despite their best efforts, some probationers do need to go before the court to face sanctions or revocation. Our officers are trained to assess offenders quickly and apply evidence-based practices. Those are risk assessment tools that our officers use and target those highest risks and needs. As we spoke about, it's not easy. Cochise County, we face challenges with treatment options. We don't have those specialized caseloads that other counties have. We provided that in the materials to you as well. And our officers are still maintaining, safety and they are truly focused on aiding rehabilitation, reducing recidivism, and restoring victims. I would like to point out one quick success story. We undergo an OC review, which is a fancy word for an audit, every 3 years through the state. Our sex offender unit achieved 100% compliance and contact standards. They monitor 70, 80 clients, two-man team across the entire county, 100% contact compliance. They have to see them in their home, their community, employment, office visits. So given the liability that caseload carries, I would say that that's pretty remarkable. Community outreach, we touched on this and with Judge Bannon in conjunction with this slide. We also participate in the adult side with Shop with the Cop. We're actively recruiting in the high schools and job fairs and colleges. Definitely, I think it is on there. Law Day, as we previously spoke about. All of these efforts really help strengthen the community and relationships and build trust. And then the last slide I just want to talk about, obviously we can't overlook the dangers our officers face when they go into the homes of these 99% are felons and they know what prison looks like. They don't want to go back there. They often encounter weapons, drugs, individuals under the influence, domestic violence situations, other crimes in progress. All those challenges aside, our officers remain professional, focused, and committed to safety and well-being of the public. The department works closely with local law enforcement, DEA, HSI, Border Patrol, enhancing or exchanging information daily to strengthen our collective efforts. This partnership includes ongoing training with those agencies I just spoke of for officer safety, drug recognition, as well as cartel and gang violence awareness. And I'm happy to speak about projects that we're involved in, at a later date if you're interested.
I have just a question.
Sure.
Does character references make a difference anymore? I'm just curious because I know my father did a lot of that in his time. And I'm just wondering, do you still use that as any kind of, does it have any value anyway?
In terms of sentencing?
Yeah, in terms of whether or not somebody should go to jail, they should get probation, they
Sure.
character references.
Yes, we'll get the pre-sentence report is conducted previous to their sentencing, and they build all of that into the pre-sentence report. I've seen stacks of character letters attached to those pre-sentence reports that compiles a lot of their data before it's even sentenced. But yes, that definitely plays a role.
The only question I got is technology.
Yes.
Like the ankle bracelet stuff, there's all
Yes.
new stuff coming out.
Yes.
So it's like cell phone based now.
Yes.
You could track them live on
Yes.
on the screen. And what's the compliance with that?
Our sex offenders are the only ones that are on GPS monitoring, but we are implementing the Reconnect app. It was supposed to be rolled out on the 12th, but AOC is doing a new development with the app. And they
So
also,
that's just like on the phone?
it's on the
It's not
phone.
like
It's an app.
bolted to their ankle?
No, but
Okay.
it does real time. So you can send your probationer, hey, take a picture. They'll take a picture and it gives you a GPS timestamp of where they're located. And they can upload documents to it. They can be provided sentencing or implementations written, or it's a great app. And like I said, we were supposed to roll that out on the 12th, but they pushed it back a little.
I mean, like if a guy is restricted to the county,
Yeah.
so you can't leave the county, and all of a sudden he crosses into New Mexico, you get an email, yeah.
Yeah, it'll give you real-time information, and we're going to roll that out for our pretrial unit as well as our sex offender
Does
unit.
somebody like watch them loaded on the phone, and is there a way
Yes.
that it can't be
Yes,
installed?
and AOC will even provide smartphones to those individuals that can't afford them for free.
Well, the other thing too, and I don't mean to steal your thunder,
No, you're
that's really
fine.
great about the app is it does stuff like if they check in to the substance abuse provider and then it tells probation that they've checked in with CBIS or whoever else that they're checking in with because they have an appointment to or a mental health provider to go talk to their doc. And I think it also tells you reminders that, hey, you have to go check in
Yes.
with your probation officer on these days. So,
Correct.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, Mr. Chairman, about it's not bolted to your ankle, but I would challenge you to find a 25-year-old who doesn't have their phone with them.
Yeah, I got you.
They would rather,
Well, and they cut those off too.
right.
It's
So
not-
they just can't put them down. They can't put their phone down and go somewhere without them. So
And
taking their addiction and using it against them.
well, and in terms of victim protection, we can set exclusion zones just like
Yeah.
a GPS unit to where we'll get alerted.
Good.
Jail fence,
It's a great tool.
whatever.
And like I said, we'll be rolling that out.
Okay. Well, I hate to cut you guys off. You got some constables waiting, so trying to get to the next subject. But thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
With that, we'll adjourn.